Happening right now on CBS Sports HQ, Dolphins owner Stephen Ross making a statement, talking with the media because his head coach is out. Brian Flores no longer the HC of the Miami Dolphins, although it's understanding that GM Chris Grier is certainly still on the staff. And here is Stephen Ross just moments ago.
In charge.
Well, I mean, I've been looking at this over 3 years now and watching the organization grow. And I think an organization can only really function if it's collaborative and it works well together. And I don't think that we were really working well as an organization that it would take to really win consistently at the NFL level.
Omar Kelly, Sun Sentinel.
From a performance standpoint, how would you assess what Chris Grier has done in order for you to say that, his job is satisfactory?
Well, I think if you look at our roster, we have a very fine, I think, an excellent roster of young players. This was all, done in the last 3 years. We had an old, aging roster before that was leading us nowhere but to mediocrity. And I think that if you look at our roster today, you see our salary cap, players we have, I think we're well suited for the future.
Barry Jackson, Miami Herald.
Hi, Stephen. Did you ever end up speaking to Deshaun Watson? I know there was a report that you were granted permission, and do you plan to explore acquiring Watson again this offseason?
I have no plans. It will be up to the head coach in terms of what he does with quarterback. But Tua, as I said before, I have a lot of confidence in Tua, but it's really going to depend who the next head coach is and the direction that he wants to take that position.
Thank you.
Marcel, ESPN. Marcel, we're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Stephen, with your comments about the state of this roster's talent level, what more do you think that this roster can accomplish as currently constructed?
I think one, it's the roster, it's the way the organization functions, communicates together. And I think that really is very important in building a winning football team and sustaining that over the long term.
So it sounds like this had as much to do with maybe communication issues or compatibility off the field as it did performance on the field.
Well, I mean, I think, if you look at it, it's really communication and collaboration. And I don't think there's any organization in this country that, unless you have excellent communication and collaborative efforts within the whole organization, that you can really win and sustain yourself in the long term.
Dave Hyde, Sun Sentinel.
Your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh, and do you have a coach in mind as you made this move?
I have no coach in mind at this point. We're going to, do a thorough, review and interview process. And that Jim Harbaugh, I love Jim Harbaugh. Had the opportunity once before to come to the Miami Dolphins, but he's at the University of Michigan, as everybody really knows. And I guess that's really one of my that is my school I graduated from, and I'm very involved in it. And I'm not going to be the person who takes Jim Harbaugh from the University of Michigan. I hope he stays there. He is a great coach.
All right, joining us now on CBS Sports HQ, three-time Super Bowl champ and former Executive of the Year, Scott Pioli, who has been listening to this press conference from Stephen Ross with us here. Just your overall thoughts of what you heard, Scott, and the situation happening right now in South Florida.
Tommy, again, reading between the lines, or actually what was just said by Stephen Ross, I think it's clear he felt that there was an issue with the collaboration and the communication between the head coach and the general manager, and he chose to pick the side of the general manager. But here's the other thing is, I know Stephen Ross. I'm on the board of RISE, which is the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality. I know Stephen. I like Stephen. Obviously, I know Brian Flores really well. I hired him when he graduated from Boston College to be an intern for me. But what was clear in listening and watching Stephen in that press conference was that this bothered him. He wasn't happy about having to do this. This is one of those situations that we all hate to hear, that this was not personal, this was business. And in order for his business to run, it sounded like this was a move that had to be made. I know this about Stephen Ross. Stephen Ross really likes Brian Flores. He loves Brian's family. So I could see on Stephen's face as he was going through this press conference, this was something that was clearly business driven and something difficult. Because this is what I'll say, Tommy, this is such a difficult day for everybody. I have had to fire people. I have been fired myself. The emotions and the ripple effect of these events that happen on a day like today are really long-reaching and far-reaching. It's not just the individual that is fired, it's all of their families. It's the assistant coaches that are going to get fired. It's the all of the people within the football operation. They lose their jobs and their families start to worry about and think their livelihood. And some people will say, well, they get paid a lot of money to do that. Yeah, they do. And the fact is they work very hard to get paid that money that they get paid.
And we thank you for sharing that. Can you pull back the curtain a little bit of what that conversation is like as a front office executives? Because we owners, we know that he or she gets their way. So if you have a directive, let's just say you are Chris Grier, you get a directive from Stephen Ross that you have to let go of Brian Flores. What type of conversation is that like? Is it generally via text, a phone call? How does that generally work, Scott?
Tommy, that's a really good question, because I'll say this. I think if the owner is the one that is making the decision, every situation that I've seen or that I've been close to, that conversation happens between the owner, the general manager, and the head coach. Sometimes there's situations or circumstances where the general manager is making the decision. He has the direct conversation with the head coach. And sometimes when you're the general manager getting fired, you have the direct conversation with the owner. Here's what I'll say is, I've heard these stories where people have been let go over the phone, or where there's somehow a message has gotten to them. And to me, those are the ones that, to me, I think are so unfortunate, because whether you like or someone or dislike someone, whether regardless of the circumstances, this is a people business, and something as significant as firing a person needs to be done in person. I've never been a fan of those things happening through messaging or phone calls. It's a conversation where people owe it to one another in terms of humanity and civility to do those things in person, Tommy.
Let's tackle the NFC North, where there's a situation where not only is there a head coaching vacancy, but also a general managerial vacancy, sort of a combo deal. What do you think about having that particular situation as opposed to just the singularity of generally only having to look for one or the other?
Well, this is a big move, and especially that it's happening right now, because you're hitting a complete reset on your organization. And in Minnesota, it's happening with someone in Rick Spielman, who's been there for 16 years, and Mike Zimmer, who's been there for several years. And then in Chicago, it's happening with Ryan Pace, who's been there, I think 4 or 5 years, or 6 years maybe, and Matt Nagy. Two different situations, but regardless, what you've done is you have lost the head of your football operation. And when I say the head, it's that combination, it's that partnership. Because regardless of the structure, regardless of the final decision making, who has that, whether it's the head coach or the general manager, those relationships are partnerships. They are done together. There's no one place that I've ever seen where it's only done by one person. It usually takes a leadership group to make decisions. We're getting ready to enter all-star time in the combine and prepare for the draft. These teams are going to have scouting staffs in place. There's going to be new general managers that are hired that also have to be a part of, either you hire your head coach first or you hire a general manager first. And then you have to have all those people get together, learn with the scouting staff to get ready to put resources and financial resources into one of the most important decisions that you make, which is your draft and building your roster and free agency.
Before I let you go, what's the time like then? Because you mentioned some hard deadlines. Is there sort of an artificial deadline for an organization to get their ducks in a row, to try to get ready for the combine, the draft, et cetera?
Well, it depends on the experience of the people that are in the college scouting director or the personnel director or the pro director. Some teams can manage for a little while. I think what's most important, it needs to be done soon, but you can't put a hard date on it, because if you're working towards getting the right timing and not focusing on getting the right people, that's a bigger problem. It's more important to get it right than it is to get it done on a certain time. I used to tell my teachers that when I had a paper due and it was maybe a couple of days late, Tommy.
Appreciate it as always, Scott. Love the insight. Appreciate you joining us here with all the things that we've been dealing with on HQ.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.